Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Dashen. Usman. The headlines at this hour. Nigeria's President Tinubu slashes presidency travel expenses by 60%. DR Congo Constitutional Court upholds President Tshisekedi's re-election. Comoros opposition calls on incumbent Azali to stand aside as presidential election draws near. Details and more shortly. News Central now begins in Nigerian capital Abuja, where President Tinubu has slashed the travel expenditure of all Nigerian government officials, both domestic and international, by 60%. Presidential spokesman Ajuri Ngelale disclosed this to State House correspondents on Tuesday at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. Now, he said the directive was issued as a cost-cutting measure on official travels and will also affect the offices of the President, Vice President, First Lady, and ministers. Earlier, Titilope Gbemisola Akosa, a legal practitioner, spoke to us on this development. Well, away from that, we apologize for not bringing that to you. But then to discuss this further, we're joined by Francis Chilaka. He is a political and social commentator. Hello, Francis. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Good morning. Yeah, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning. Now, a lot of people have actually commended, the president's move. But how do you think, Francis, that this the reduction in travel expenditure, how do you think it will align with the government's priorities or even goals in terms of fiscal responsibility and prudent financial management?
Well, let me join the host of Nigerians who have commended Mr. President for taking this initiative. It is quite timely, considering the fact that the ordinary Nigerians are going through a lot in terms of accommodation, transportation, feeding, and all of that, and insecurity. But going away from that, we need to also ask Mr. President that not only cutting down on that measure, but also to look at the position of the Constitution when it comes to the office of the First Lady and the wife of the Vice President. These are not constitutional. So as far as I'm concerned, the president should do the right thing in that regard to remove those ones as well. And also for us to be able to benefit more from this as a nation, we need to call on Mr. President to also look at health tourism. He has to take a position on it where government officials travel abroad for medical treatment. It has to be, squarely dealt with. So there's a lot of work for this presidency to do, but I would say that, yes, cutting it by 60%, he needs to do more than that. He needs to go more, maybe bringing it to 80%. You don't need to carry a whole crowd of people going from one state to another. And I'm happy they also mentioned the fact that if Mr. President has to go to maybe Imo State, he doesn't need to move security from Abuja all the way to Imo State. He will use the security in that state during that period. It's a welcome development. And I believe that, yes, in cutting it, it's going to also help in financing, some part of the budget, because a lot of money is spent on travels and expenses. I know a lot of people traveling with Mr. President. These are costs that is being borne and paid for by taxpayers' money. So I applaud Mr. President and I expect him to do more.
All right, so the president needs to do a lot more to drastically reduce the cost of governance. It's a step in the right direction. But taking a look at the budget, now what potential impact might this cost-cutting measure have on the overall budget allocation and also the utilization within governmental departments?
Well, I think where we'll be looking at now is that now that government is cutting costs, especially on travels, maybe it will reduce the amount of cars they want to buy. That's a way to start from. All the money that has been budgeted for cars for presidency, vice presidency, wife of the president, wife of the vice president, and all of that. Maybe with this cut, maybe we'll be looking at cutting down on these cars. If you cut down on the number of cars to be bought, you will definitely be saving a lot of money from, the budget. So, and also I think it should also apply to the senators as well and to the honorable members. Maybe that decision of buying cars of 160 million and 130 million was a very huge mistake that has been made. Maybe there's a way we can remedy it and see what can be done about it. Because you can't keep spending so much money when the people are suffering, when the people are not feeling well, when insecurity is ravaging the land. So I think there's a lot of work, and I believe that the president knows that there's a lot of work for him to do. It's not just cutting expenditures, but he needs to look at what will impact on the budget and remove those frivolities that are there that do not add value to the Nigerian people.
All right, Francis, now you've actually spoken a lot about, the benefits of cutting, the cost of governance. But let's take a look. I don't know if you actually feel there will be the benefits for, cutting costs, especially in travel expenses. Now, if there is, I actually want you to tell us if you think there would be potential implications of this particular directive, especially on functioning and operational capabilities of government officials like the president and also the ministers. Do you think it could have an adverse effect or even impact the ability for these people to fulfill their official duties and responsibilities?
If you're doing the right thing, if you're doing what the people want, the people who voted you into power want, you don't need all that kind of security. A few years back, if you recall, when a president is traveling to a state, for instance, you see the people will line up, cheerfully, waving flowers, waving all sorts of things, happily to see their president, and the president will, come out and, socialize with them and relate with them. But it's because of the fact that corruption and bad governance over the years has taken toll on our system. That is why you see a president will need all the security in the world, to be able to do anything. But I think that, if Mr. President is giving us good governance, if he's doing the right thing, I can assure you that even the governors would trek to their local government without anybody harassing them.
All right, now one thing Nigerian government has actually been accused of from time immemorial is, bringing out policies, bringing out directives, but not being able to implement them. Now, beyond the immediate, cost-saving aspect, what strategies or even measures do you think that the president can actually, inculcate even the government to implement and enhance the efficiency of this particular directive?
The directive starts from Mr. President. If Mr. President wants it to work, he knows what to do. He should start from himself. I mean, I think, was it before the New Year, we saw when the president visited, drove through Lagos Island, we saw the entourage that followed Mr. President. It was like something else. We saw the number of people that went to Coupon 28 and all of that. So it depends on Mr. President. Mr. President, in making the rules, must use himself as an example. He needs to start from himself. When the governors, when the ministers, when the senators see that Mr. President himself has cut down on this thing and is following what he has instructed others to do, then they will have no choice than to follow. So Mr. President has a lot of work to do. He needs to be a president that leads by example. And that's what we want. Let him be number one person, leave out these instructions. I am telling you, every other person will fall in line.
All right, Francis. Well, just before we go, now you did say that the president needs to cut down, the cost of governance by 80% and not just 60%. And you also mentioned other things that he can actually do. But are there broader reforms or even initiatives that are aimed at improving governance and also fiscal discipline that this particular directive of cutting down, travel expense by 60% might be a part of?
Corruption. The government must have the will, the political will to fight corruption.
Okay.
The bane of our problem as a nation is corruption. If the presidency is ready to fight corruption, bring to book all those who have, in one way or the other, misused the funds handed over to them or kept in their custody, then the lot of things would fall into place. So the problem is not just giving instructions. The problem is, do this presidency have what it takes to fight corruption and fight it well?
All right, well, thank you so much, Francis Chilaka, for joining us at this time and giving your thoughts on this matter. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving on to graft matters. Nigeria's Minister of Humanitarian Affairs has appeared before the nation's anti-graft agency, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The minister, who has been suspended by President Bola Tinubu following allegations of diverting about 585 million naira, thereby breaching civil service rules. Now, some Nigerians who spoke to News Central Television in Abuja have commended the action by government and called for an extension of the ongoing investigations to other agencies. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, reports.
In the last few days, Nigeria's social media space has been flooded with reactions over the payment of about 585 million naira into a private account, in breach of laid-down fiscal rules by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. While the action contravenes Chapter 7, Section 713 of the nation's Financial Regulation Act of 2009, I quote, "Personal money shall in no circumstances be paid into a government bank account, nor shall any public money be paid into a private bank account. An officer who pays public money into a private account is deemed to have done so with fraudulent intention." End of quote.
We have pointed out to Mr. President Buhari and Tinubu that some public officials are diverting public taxpayers' money into their own personal accounts in the name of project accounts. And we suggested to the government to block those leakages.
A letter was sent to the Accountant General Office that is ought to not has happened, because that is a program, that is a project. The project is self-accounted. All they needed to do is to do that, follow the procedures. And just so you know, it's illegal for that amount of money to be sent to a staff.
Despite claims by the minister that the payment had followed laid-down procedures with approval from the Presidency and the Accountant General, which has been denied, the suspension of the minister by the President has also received public commendation.
If you allow her to stay there now, there's some certain file that will be hiding. If he knows that you are going to public office for your personal interest, you should leave public office for somebody that can do well for the common masses. What this new government are doing is right.
To everyone that have intention to do such acts, it's not encouraging, but the suspension came immediately and is a very good one.
Advocates are also calling for the investigation to be extended to other government ministries and agencies, urging government not to interfere in the investigations.
This problem is not only in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. It is a problem that you see in many government agencies because people don't respect the rules.
Around the scandal we're talking about, a minister pointed a paper, that's the Minister of Interior, saying he has resigned from a company 5 years ago, but the company is being awarded to monitor and stuff like that.
While the federal government has received rave reviews for its quick intervention in suspending the embattled minister, Nigerians are hoping that the investigations will be thorough and justice will not be swept under the carpet. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
News Central now returns after the break. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has seized the passports of the suspended Nigeria's Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu, and her predecessor, Sadia Umar Farouk, over the ongoing investigations into scandals in the ministry. Edu, who arrived at the EFCC headquarters, Abuja, at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, was still being quizzed by the Commission's investigators. Now, as the EFCC interrogated the suspended minister over the 44 billion naira fraud uncovered in the ministry, it was learned that managing directors of the 3 commercial banks were also questioned over the fraud. The scandal involving the minister burst open after a leaked memo revealed that the suspended minister directed the Accountant General of the Federation, Oluwole Median, to transfer 585 million naira to a private account owned by one Onielu Bridget, who the ministry claimed currently serves as the project accountant grants for vulnerable groups. The integrity and honesty of Nigeria's public office holders has yet again been questioned following the recent allegations of graft against serving and past officials of the nation's humanitarian ministry. Now, while there have been several suspensions and dismissal of public officials by President Bola Tinubu in the last few days, many Nigerians have described their conduct as an age-long rot in the nation's civil service and public service. Marvelous Obomanu was on the streets of Abuja and sampled opinions of Nigerians.
Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has suspended a few public officers in his government for alleged embezzlement and misappropriation of public funds. The air around the suspensions, according to many, have yet again revealed the rot in the nation's civil and public service and the need for a tough stance against official graft. The ordinary Nigerian feels the presence of government, rates its performance through the activities of civil servants. Thus, the effectiveness or otherwise of the government to a large extent is determined by the civil service. Now, many Nigerians are saying that this institution has been enmeshed by corrupt and dishonest officers.
A lot is going on in Nigerian civil service. Ghost workers, pardon, a lot of things. Most of them are covered by those who should expose them.
As I speak to you right now, there are a lot of civil servants that are still in the employment of Nigeria that are outside the country doing whatever they want to do. Some of them went under the disguise of going there to study. They have found other greener pastures there and they will never come back again. And their salaries are still running in Nigeria.
There's a rot that is deep-rooted in that particular system, and everybody needs to go out, and then new people needs to come back in. But however, we know that that is impossible. So what do? We need to set in place stringent consequence measures. We need to ensure that the consequences for actions are meted out for the appropriate crimes, and nobody should be left behind.
Some of them bribe their way in, so what do you expect? They want to recover that money. So any available opportunity they will grab and start making use of.
Looking at the corruption ranking of Nigeria by Transparency International in 2022, which revealed that out of 189 countries sampled, Nigeria ranked 150 on the scale, a situation that asks questions on the efforts of past governments in changing the situation. Some have raised the issue of poor remuneration of civil servants, integrity of anti-corruption agencies, and a poor recording process of activities by public officials in the service.
A lot of people believe that if you steal plenty money, you get to them, you bribe your way out. That is why today, if somebody is arrested by EFCC, you don't give a damn. Is it not money? I'll say to them.
Most of these civil servants are making less than $100 every month, which can barely cater for their basic needs, because the government is actually not providing social amenities for us. We have to generate power on our own. We have to pay for our health system, our health on our own. We have to get water for ourselves. And these things need to change.
Most civil servants are not around in Nigeria. Their salaries are running. You understand? And by the time you see your neighbor not doing the right thing, and nobody is reporting him or her, you want to join suit. So what I think the civil service should do is to take care of the record and monitor it very well. You understand? Once that records are monitored, you can be able to trace to your office, to your department, who is at work and who is not at work.
Nigerians have commended the quick response of the president as he suspended suspected officials, ordering the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission not to leave any stone unturned in its quest to get to the root of the matter. Many will be awaiting the outcome of the investigations. In Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Obomanu.
We now head to the courts, where we understand that the Federal Capital Territory High Court in Abuja has declared the prolonged detention of former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, without trial as a flagrant violation of his fundamental rights. The court slammed a total of 100 million naira fine against the federal government and the Economic Financial Crimes Commission and barred them from rearresting or detaining the ex-CBN governor afresh without a valid court order. But the EFCC expressed its dissatisfaction with the judgment, vowing to go on appeal. The judgment was given in a fundamental human rights suit filed by the former CBN governor following his prolonged detention in custody of the Department of State Services. Now, the suit also asked the court to order the respondents to pay him 1 billion naira damages and to restrain them from further arresting and or detaining him. Listed as defendants in the suit were the federal government, the Attorney General of the Federation, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and its chairman, Ola Olukoyede. Earlier, Justice Ojieno, a legal practitioner, spoke to us on this development. Now, moving on to election matters, Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission in Kano said it has completed necessary arrangements for the conduct of the by-election of Kunchi, Tanyawa, Kura, Garim and Rimingado Tofa State Assembly by-elections slated for the 3rd of February. Now, the resident electoral commissioner in the state, Abdu Zongo, disclosed this while addressing stakeholders at the commission's headquarters in Kano on Tuesday. Now, according to him, the commission has deployed sensitive and non-sensitive materials to all the affected local government areas. Zongo explained that the Beavers machines would be used during the rerun elections aimed at ensuring free, fair, and credible elections. News Central now. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back. Now to infrastructure matters. The iconic third mainland bridge in Lagos has now been strategically closed to traffic and will remain so for between 3 to 4 months. Now, the bridge, which is the major of 3 that connects commuters heading from the mainland to the island and vice versa, will be undergoing major rehabilitation work during this period. News Central's Bernard Akede witnessed the closure and filed in this report.
In November 2023, a portion of the bridge was closed to traffic for some repairs, but was later reopened on December 21st to ease traffic during the Yuletide period. This time, it's the main thing. Both sides of the bridge will be strategically closed at certain times of the day for major rehabilitation work. At about 12:40 p.m., an entourage of officials arrived at the Iyanoworo axis of the bridge to commence the official closure and give the needed information. The entourage then proceeded on a more than 1 kilometer walk to the junction just before the third mainland bridge, where the traffic from Ogudu splits up to those going to Oshodi-Apapa Expressway and those going to the island via the third mainland bridge. And there, they addressed the media.
The scope of works includes the milling of the existing asphalt. All the existing asphalt you're looking at, from that point of diversion, we will mill them off. Everything, and then we'll replace the defective expansion joints that have been identified. Some expansion joints have been identified as being defective. We're going to remove them and then we'll replace them.
We have well over 250 men from last month. Even the GM last month is there present. The whole idea is to ensure that, yes, there will be some bit of discomfort, like Mrs. Keisha said, but we'll ensure that we'll make it as less stressful as possible.
The repair work that will be done on the bridge is supposed to last between 5 and 15 years if properly maintained, before thinking of another major rehabilitation.
Motorists will no longer have access here until 12 a.m. in the night. So when we block it now, traffic will be diverted to Bagada. So they can use Bagada, Antoni, and Ikorodu Road, Western Avenue, Kata or Eko Bridge to the island. And tomorrow by 12 p.m. noon, we'll be doing the same thing, blocking this place. It means that people who are going to the island will no longer be able to use this going forward by after 12 noon for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks.
The Lagos State Commissioner of Police was also around to assure Lagos road users that the police will ensure utmost security and maintain law and order during this uncomfortable period, but they will require the full cooperation and support of commuters.
Our men will be here to control traffic, also not only to control manage traffic, but to ensure that no form of robbery or attack to motorists. We are going to secure the road effectively because we know there will be long stretch of traffic.
The Commissioner of Police has already told us the kind of collaboration we're going to put in place. There's going to be 24 hours observatory. There's going to be enforcement. There's going to be guide for motorists. We want just to enjoin motorists to please be patient and obey every traffic rule and the traffic managers on the road.
And so commences the first 6 to 8 weeks of rehabilitation work on the third mainland bridge, starting from this axis, Yanaworo-Bega axis, up all the way down to the end of the bridge into the island. And then after not more than 8 weeks, the work transfers to the other side of the bridge. That's the side coming from the island down to the mainland. It definitely is going to be a 4 months period of discomfort and inconvenience for users of this axis of Lagos. But the hope and the prayer of all Lagosians using this route is that after rehabilitation work is concluded, the bridge will be a lot better and commuters will be happier using this bridge. From Lagos for News Central, I am Bernard Akede.
Now we head to South Africa, where we understand that Johannesburg has held its annual Cannabis Expo, the largest of its kind in Africa, attracting experts, activists and enthusiasts from across the continent. Now, as its popularity grows, so does the desire to understand how cannabis can revolutionize African healthcare. News Central's Bongani Siziba gives us more.
This exhibition has turned into a treasure trove of information and innovation. Exhibitors from all over the world have come together to showcase the largest advancement in cannabis research, cultivation techniques and products development.
We realized back in 2018 we'd been looking at the cannabis market internationally and looking at what's happening, the opportunities in cannabis in Africa, certainly in South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, but on a continent as a whole. And we realized there was no annual meeting point for the cannabis industry, and there was no real showpiece for the cannabis industry, and that's why we launched the Cannabis Expo, and it's been so exciting. Launched it in 2018, it's grown and grown and grown year on year, and we're excited to hopefully be taking it to other countries in Africa as well.
Experts say that CBD oils have shown tremendous potential in treating a wide range of conditions, including inflammation, sleeping disorders, and even seizures. Ensuring quality is vital to maximize its therapeutic benefits and ensure consumer safety. Those who have used it say cannabis has become their lifeline, providing hope and healing when conventional treatments have failed.
CBD is more of a medicine, it's more of the medicinal part of the cannabis plant, and it helped me in terms of being able to relax because I had a problem with anxiety and I had a lot of thoughts, and it helped me just in the process of being able to regulate my sleeping patterns up until they got to a normal state.
Some African countries have started embracing cannabis as a medical resource. From Lesotho, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, governments are implementing stringent regulations to ensure quality control and patient safety, while creating opportunities for economic growth and job creation.
We are at the early phases of the cannabis taking off as an industry. So us as a research institute, we're still trying to understand the dynamics of the various plants, pests pathogens of cannabis.
Cannabis strains are known for their diverse chemical composition and unique medicinal properties. Researchers are also delving deeper into harnessing their full potential, unlocking new treatments and possibilities for patients across the continent and beyond. As African countries stand united in this medical revolution, many are hopeful that the healing herb will shine bright on the horizon. In Johannesburg, Bongani Siziba, reporting for News Central.
News Central now continues in Central Africa, where the Constitutional Court of the Democratic Republic of the Congo on Tuesday officially confirmed the re-election of President Felix Tshisekedi following the December 20 polls. Now, according to the court's declaration, Tshisekedi secured a dominant 73.47% of the vote, while main opposition candidate Moise Katumbi trailed behind with 18.08%. The president-elect is scheduled to be sworn in on January 20 after the Constitutional Court approves the election results. Now, according to the Independent National Electoral Commission that oversaw the general elections, over 18 million Congolese from a total of 44 million registered voters cast their ballots in the election for the president, the National Assembly, and 26 provincial assemblies. In East Africa, where with just under a week to go before presidential elections in Comoros, candidate Mohamedou Ahamada says it is time for President Azali Assoumani to stand aside. Ahamada said his candidature is about national peace and stability, adding that Comoros deserves better.
Nous attendons des zones, on dit qu'ils vont voler les élections, mais on ne va pas lâcher l'affaire. On ira jusqu'au bout. On ira jusqu'au bout. Et on sait que...
Parce que ma candidature dans ces élections est animée par un souci de paix nationale et de stabilité. Je suis persuadé qu'avec la tournure que la politique Azali ait prise, eh bien, on risque d'aller vers soit l'embargo à Moélie ou vers le séparatisme en juin. Deviennent émergents, c'est l'émergence qu'on demande aux Comores. Faire peur aux gens, faire en sorte que personne n'ait le droit de s'exprimer, je ne pense pas. Les Comores méritent mieux. Et je crois que Azali ait fait son temps. Il a le droit de prendre sa retraite politique.
All right, now moving on, we move to business now, where we have a guest to discuss the 60% travel expense cut by the president, that's Bola Tinubu, with us. And to discuss this, we're being joined by Dumebi Oluwole. She's a senior economist at Stears. Hello, Dumebi. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
All right, so would actually love for you to share your thoughts on, this Mr. President's directive, and what do you think, or what would you attribute to the sudden idea behind cutting the cost of, travel expense by 60%?
I would say it's just one of those moves to instill confidence in investors, businesses, and the general macroeconomy. We've seen the Naira, we've seen Nigeria's macroeconomy come under intense attack just simply because we're not seeing the government stick to its reforms, or at least complement the reforms that it has taken up that have been more biting to consumer wallets, to consumers, and to businesses. So we have often discussed, and I think it's not just Stears or even myself as an economist coming out to say that the cost of governance in Nigeria is extremely high compared to what you find around the world. We've seen, ministers traveling or governors traveling and the president traveling with almost 50 people and things like that, feed into the national budget, which is where, the key conversation is actually supposed to be situated on how that the government is trying to, from a fiscal perspective now, trying to positively anchor investor sentiment and business sentiment, saying, oh, we've taken up reforms and we're actually going to take the next necessary steps to make sure that, these painful reforms are actually worth it for people. From the revised 2024 budget, that's the one that was signed and passed into law, expenditure was increased by about 1.2 trillion from what it was before, which was about 27 trillion to about 28.2 trillion. That's what was signed. And in that revision, we saw an increase in capital expenditure. And for the first time in a very long time, we're seeing capital expenditure by budget estimates surpass recurrent expenditure, simply signaling that the government is trying to do what it takes to make sure that they provide necessary infrastructure, provide necessary health and education infrastructure, which is a good sign generally. So in summary, it is just positively trying to anchor, it's just a step trying to anchor investor sentiments positively, and it might work if they eventually stick to it.
All right, maybe you actually just spoke about investor sentiment and the positive side, but is there a negative side to this? Because while a lot of people are for it, some actually think that it might hinder or hamper the ability for the officials to actually fulfill their duties, especially when it comes to international cooperation, diplomacy, and trade relations.
That's a very interesting angle to it. I didn't think people would actually see that as a negative thing, but to be very honest, it is not. From an economic standpoint, what this does is simply reduce the cost of governance. Every minister that has been appointed, every senator, every governor, they have their responsibilities, they have their roles, and they are aware of what they should be doing in office. So traveling to foster international community support or presence, it doesn't change anything if after traveling you come back and you don't do anything to make sure that what you've learned or what you've seen or what you're planning to foster, it doesn't translate into increased foreign investments into the country or even to the state. To be very honest, we've seen the national budget take up the illusion of or not take up the illusion, but take up the stance that if we don't spend a lot on recurrent expenditure, we will not be able to achieve economic growth, and which is very, very far from the truth. We need to spend more on capital expenditure, and things like traveling to foster international relationships, if they do not translate into increased income for the country, it is necessary. Aside from that, how many people do we really need to travel to foster international support? How many people do we really need to travel? For instance, the office of the president, according to what the president did say, they're cutting down the travel and the amount of people that will travel from about, I think, 50 people to about 20 people. That's still a lot, to be very honest. We don't see that happening in advanced economies where you have 20 people traveling at a time. Even IMF missions to countries are not that elaborate. And we just need to face the facts here, because by the time you calculate the travel cost, the cost of the hotels, the cost of feeding, cost of the flight tickets, it does take a toll on the country's finances. And right now, this is not the time for such elaborate expenditure. The country is going through a significant reform phase where people's incomes are squeezed and people are not able to spend. And the reason why this is extremely worrisome and extremely important that we get consumer spending back up is because 70% of our GDP relies on this. So if we're not spending, if people are not spending, if businesses will continue to suffer, outputs will reduce. And the government does have a very not so ambitious, but quite optimistic growth outlook for 2024 at 3.88%, significantly higher than what we've been experiencing, which is an average of about 2% for the past 3 years. So cutting down expenditure on elaborate things would really do good for the economy.
Well, thank you so much for joining us at this time and, speaking on this. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now, following South Africa's application to the International Court of Justice against Israel for violating the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in Gaza, humanitarian organization Gift of the Givers is calling on African countries to fully support the proceeding, particularly South Africa's request for provisional measures. Now, Gift of the Givers has been distributing medical supplies, food and water in Gaza since the war started, and are also involved in a women and child care center a health facility, and also schools. The International Court of Justice will hold a public hearing on South Africa's request for the indication of temporary measures in the case South Africa versus Israel. Meanwhile, Israel responded to the application, calling the claims within it baseless and libelous. It also claimed South Africa was collaborating with the terrorist group Hamas that calls for Israel's destruction. And that's all we can take at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. We told you that Nigeria's President Tinubu has slashed presidency travel expenses by 60%. We also told you that DR Congo Constitutional Court has upheld President Tshisekedi's re-election. And finally, you heard that Comoros opposition have called on incumbent Azali to stand aside as presidential election draws near. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen. Usman.